Hey, I'm Dr. Jace Broadhurst. I'm teaching a class called Scriptural Foundations. It's a class on hermeneutics. I'm sure that's helpful to you. Hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the art and the science of interpretation. And in this particular class, we're talking about interpretation of Scripture. How do we understand this divine and human book? Should we be looking at it as a human book or as something sacred that comes from God specifically dropped down into our hands? What do we do with this book and how does it apply to our lives? What's going on here? So we're going to talk about general hermeneutics questions like how does history work into Scripture? Is it literal? Is it figurative? Is it absolute or relative? These kinds of big picture questions we're going to talk about. And then we're going to get to more special hermeneutics, which is genre studies. What's the difference between poetry and prose? And of course you know that, but when it comes to Scripture, how do you understand Proverbs differently than law or prophecy? Or how about apocalyptic? What do we do with these end of the world kinds of scenarios in Revelation? We're going to talk about all those things. This class is called Spiritual Applications. It follows Spiritual Foundations, which is how to understand Scripture. With this, how do we apply Scripture? What do we do with this book that we consider to be sacred, divine, and human? How do we apply it to our lives? Specifically in two areas. The first area in this is our spiritual disciplines. You know, we have a lot of disciplines in our life. Maybe you do push-ups every day or crunches, or you work out the body, and maybe some of you read every evening because you want to keep that going, or doing Sudoku or something like that to keep your mind in the right place. Well, spiritually, we should be doing the same thing. And there are spiritual disciplines of the Christian life that have been around for centuries. Prayer is one of those. Worship, confession, celebration, right? These kinds of things. How about fasting? What do we do with fasting? Is it just for our abs? Or is there some spiritual part of this? Simplicity, right? These issues, even Bible study, these kinds of things are things that we should be thinking about to discipline ourselves as Christians. The second part of this class is how do we deal with stress? So how do we apply Scripture to the stressful areas in our life? I don't know about you, but money sometimes stresses me out. How about marriage? Parenting? Dealing with children? How are you supposed to parent? Well, the Bible has something to say about this. And there's some things it doesn't have to say, and we'll talk about both of those things. But how about things like natural disaster? This God who loves us allows these things to happen? How about pandemics? Is it the end of the world? Is that how we're supposed to be thinking about these things? We'd love for you to join this class, to learn a little bit about that, to think more deeply about these issues. Maybe not to get all the answers, but to have a conversation about what Scripture does for us and how we should be applying it.